Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. Just last week, Sri Lanka launched its national policy on gender equality and women's empowerment, which coincided with International Women's Day. The policy was put forth by the Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment, Sri Lanka, with technical assistance from the UNFPA. Tonight's discussion will focus on where Sri Lanka is heading in terms of ensuring and enabling meaningful measures for gender equality and equity. I'm so pleased to welcome to our studio Kumudu Pereira. She's a legal officer at the Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment. Good evening and welcome, Kumudu.
Good evening.
Kumudu, my first question to you is, how does it feel to have a cabinet ministry for women's affairs after a bit of a hiatus?
Yes, actually now our ministry, we are dealing with children, women, and now since this present the cabinet we are dealing with persons with disabilities, elders. So that all together covers about, I think, nearly 80% of the population. So we are dealing with a large scale kind of a population. So we have to have a cabinet ministry to actually, formulate laws or policies or whatever, because it's more than half of the people in the country. So,
Absolutely, it's of pivotal importance. And under the previous government, there was no cabinet ministry for women and children's affairs.
Yes, I think previously, before that government, it had always been a cabinet ministry.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's first, before delving into the national policy, speak about the importance of using legislation as a tool to enhance and enable greater equality and equity for women who make up 52% of Sri Lanka's population. The present government has made several undertakings saying that new legislation will be brought in to bridge this gap in laws to ensure and enable enhanced protection for women who are discriminated against at different levels in society. So speak to us about the importance of bringing in legislation, of having these regulations.
Yes, Sri Lanka, comparatively to most of the South Asian countries, Sri Lanka is kind of liberal. Maybe because our religion is Buddhism, I don't know, maybe Christianity. Women generally had the place in society, but with lot of stereotyping, with lot of unnecessary ideologies, they have been kind of marginalized, kind of discriminated against by other genders. So other genders like men. So I feel that to ensure, it's like you need laws to regulate people. Just requesting, just asking people to do something would not work. So as long as the law is there, you are sure at least they would adhere to whatever is there in the law. So I feel it's better to come out with the law to ensure that what we are preaching for, what we women are asking for, is like given to them in a regularized, systematic way.
Could you speak to us a bit about the legislation, the laws that are being proposed by the present government?
Yeah, initially we drafted the policy on gender equality and women empowerment. Through the policy, what we tried to do is kind of have a standardized framework to develop laws on it. So right now we are in the process of drafting 3 legislation. One would be on gender equality, the other one would be on women empowerment, and the third bill would be, we call it bill because it's still in the draft stages. The third bill is the National Commission Bill. So that would be an independent commission for women.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Kumudu, it's important to talk about some of the island-wide initiatives that your ministry has undertaken just to create some awareness among the public. Speak to us about some of the initiatives that you're engaged in at the ministry.
We do public awareness. We do, it's not only public awareness, we do awareness for government officers as well, including the police or the health sector, education sector, because we have to do constant awareness for people to keep them, just remind them that they have to safeguard women's rights, they have to safeguard kids, the children's rights, because both children and women come under our ministry. So likewise, we do TV programs, we do radio programs, lots of campaign on. We had at one period we had a campaign on ending sexual harassment in transport. So we would go and paste stickers, we would speak to the people like that. We had several news articles, like newsletters, which we printed and disseminated, because we have a network. We have 5 officers working in the divisional secretariats, so that adds up to kind of, I think, a 30,000 card or something if you add up the whole amount, because there are 360 something divisional secretariats. So 5 officers attached to our ministry, and our ministry in the sense Women and Child Affairs. Social Empowerment also, they have several other officers attached to the divisional secretariats who are working in the grassroots level. So through those officers, we would, they are requested to go to the community. They are requested to go to the people who are in need, speak to them, make the public aware, make the community aware.
Right.
And we have women federations at district level, which are also registered under our ministry. So we would work with them, and they are like, they have their own networks. They do entrepreneurial work. So that kind of systems are there, which is working in the community level. So that's how we try to take our message across. Only problem is like, we have limited resources, so it's a bit difficult to go on a large scale.
Okay, but when you say limited resources, is it limited budgetary allocations that you're talking about?
Yes, limited budgetary allocations are there. So we actually request for funding from UN agencies. There are a lot of INGOs and UN agencies that are working on this area, so they support us. Through their support, we do the awareness work.
But it is of crucial importance that necessary funds are allocated from the budget itself, because it's the state's responsibility to ensure the safety and security of women. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, but I think with the current economic situation, so there is kind of a restriction on getting budgets. Yeah.
Okay, sure. With regard to the initiatives that you spoke of, does your ministry have a mechanism through which the results are monitored? For example, if you do a campaign, like an island-wide campaign on ending harassment in public transport, is there a mechanism through which you monitor, like the before and after? Or is there no such mechanism?
Not on ad hoc kind of work, but there are several action plans that we developed. Like we developed the sexual and gender-based violence, like preventing that kind of. We call it the SGBV action plan.
Okay.
Which ran for which was from 2017 to 2021. We monitored the progress of the action plan, and there was this other action plan on national human rights. It's called the National Human Rights Action Plan, which that also we kind of monitored to a certain extent. But ad hoc work, like where you do some kind of awareness or something like that, there is no such mechanism to monitor that. This nationally accepted, nationally launched, nationally widely publicized action plans, there is a monitoring mechanism to see the implementation, whether it had been successful or not.
Let's speak a bit about the scourge of domestic violence. Women from across the country, across different stratas, economic conditions, bear the brunt of this. And one of their key concerns is, look, if I'm getting beaten up by my husband, there is no safe house for me to go to. So I have nothing else to do than to stay with my partner who's beating me up. So isn't it important that the Ministry of Women's Affairs has a network of safe houses in Sri Lanka, which is like a structured process.
Yes, we do. We already have 10 shelters.
But is that enough?
That is not enough, because initially it was the women in need who started shelters,
Yes.
and then we as a government went ahead and we started our own shelter. Then we realized that it's better to coordinate and get together with the civil society and work together. We need a kind of a holistic approach into these kinds of issues. So based on that, we are working with the women in need, and there's JSAC, we call it the JSAC, Jaffna Social Action Center, I think. With them, we are working in Jaffna, Mullaitivu, those areas.
Okay.
In Batticaloa, Colombo, Mathara, those areas, we are working with women in need. Kandy, we are working with Women Development Center or something. So we have 10 shelters island-wide. That's the best we could do right now, but we are planning on expanding.
Right.
And we have one shelter for victims of trafficking, female victims of trafficking.
Right.
But we don't get many cases right now. And there are 2 shelters for disabled women.
Okay.
And when you come to domestic violence, I have to tell, it's not only the husband. It's Domestic Violence Act. You can apply it for
Any gender.
Any gender. Yeah. Your partner could be anybody. But the act was brought in, it's Act number 34 of 2005. It came into operation in 2005. During this time period, we realized the civil societies who are using the act, who are filing cases under the act, and individual people, individual lawyers who are filing cases under the act, they came and we got together and we spoke about the act, and we realized they came up with the idea that the act is not it's not powerful enough. It's not sufficient. There are several loopholes which has to be really looked into. So accordingly, we amended the act. We started the amending process in 2017. So all this time we were amending, but with the change of government, it got delayed. But right now, everything is drafted. Everything is in order. We got the approval from the legal draftsman, and we got AG's concurrence. It's all there. So in the present act, we have looked into, like in the previous act, we did not, in the interpretation, economic violence was not mentioned as a form of abuse. And when, like, say, it has to be either myself, if I'm a victim, I have to go ahead and file a case. So all and there was stamp duty, and there was a rigid process. So all that was looked into, and all that was amended. Where, say, if I'm a victim of violence, if you're my friend and if you're an interested party, you can file the case on my behalf. So that is kind of a relief for me, because if I'm a real bad victim of violence, and if I'm like locked up in a house, I can't come out. I mean, if my partner or whoever is monitoring where I'm going and all that, so I have a real threat. So you can do all that on my behalf. Economic violence was also recognized, where we used to get so many cases where our wives are not given a penny by the husband. It's just they would bring all the food and dump it in the house, and that's it. She has to manage on whatever that is there. So that's like a mental trauma, You're not a free person. You can't do whatever you want. So all this has been looked into. So hopefully the act would be the cabinet. We are hoping to get the Cabinet of Ministers approval during this year.
Okay,
so
this
after
is
that,
very promising and very progressive. So kudos on that. Kumudu, let's talk a bit about the National Policy on Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment, which was launched last week. Speak to us about some of the salient points that it carries. Yes. It
has the best salient point is, I think, talking about gender equality, because all this time we had not spoken about gender as such. So now in this policy we have recognized that there are several genders in the country. It's like apart from male, female, there are other genders as well. So we have given recognition to that, because those gender minorities had gone through a lot of harassments, a lot of issues they had faced, especially with regard to their identity. Like, I think that problem is also solved now, getting their own identity, where it says whether he's male or female, or if it's other gender. So those issues are being solved little by little. That is, I think, one of the best features of the policy, and it had been divided into 8 thematic areas. So we are talking about identity and autonomy. In that, we are focusing largely on the citizenship issues like identity, the nationality and citizenship of people. And the other part is stereotyping. That's the main issue we have in Sri Lanka, gender stereotyping. I think when we are kids, I was listening to a lecture recently saying in education, even in the books, Pelapot, in those books you see amma uyanawa tata pattare balanawa nangi boni kanalonawa malli sellam karanawa or riding a bike or whatever. So that is called stereotyping. That is a real bad issue in our country. It's like we say a woman has to do the household part. And we don't believe in single parents, all that stuff. So so that's where we this identity and autonomy, through that thematic area we're going to focus. The policy commitment is to focus on those areas. And there's this economic empowerment and productive employment. It's like giving equal participation for women in similar employment. Now I think military is a place where there's a lot of discrimination, because after a certain point women cannot get promoted. I think in the police it's the DIG. Apart from that, I don't think there had ever been a female IGP. So that's where in economic empowerment is needed, where if you're qualified, you should have the ability to climb the ladder. And in this also we are referring to gender minorities in the country, for them to have their right to have some sort of employment. And we are focused, the third thematic area is social equality and empowerment. In the education, in social equality, education is one aspect. In that we have to ensure that girls get education. The quality, perfect, proper education. You know. And the other aspect is the health. Health is quite crucial, because in Sri Lanka, I think there are issues with reproductive health, the women's ability to make decision on reproductive health,
bodily autonomy. Let's take a pause and just discuss that. Bodily autonomy. If it's my body, I need to be able to make the whatever decision that I want. And the law has to be in line with internationally accepted norms and internationally accepted best practices. How are we faring in this respect?
We are still fighting with the process of trying to get the abortion law passed. We have all drafted that, because we believe in the draft, it had not come to the limelight, so we are hoping one day it will come. In the draft, we are talking about giving the ability for victims of incest, victims of rape, to go in for an abortion, and if there is a congenital abnormality in the fetus, for that mother to decide. Because right now abortion is given to a mother if there is a threat to her life. That's the only exception she has. So those three we have discussed, and the procedure is very, very, what do you call that, very rigid procedure. You can't just go to a doctor and get it done. It's like a DMO, that is a district medical officer. He has to certify that this has to be done, and I think 2 or 3 doctors have to certify, and has to be done in by 2 or 3 doctors. It's a very rigid process. She can't just go to a hospital and get it done. So, but the law is drafted and it's all there. Hopefully it will come out very soon. I believe that at least in those situations, I mean, if you're a victim of rape, you should have the ability to decide whether you're going to go ahead with the pregnancy or not. Because it's not a very pleasant experience. You don't get good memories of it. So if carrying the result of it would not be that enjoyable for the woman.
In society, there is this misconception that if there is legislation brought to make permissible abortion in certain limited circumstances as prescribed by medical professionals and international best practices, this would promote promiscuity among women. What's your take on this?
First, we have to just do it and see how it goes, because of those kind of ideologies, you can't just put these laws or whatever these practices behind. You have to swim and see if you're going to drown or not. I don't think we should let that kind of
unscientific thinking govern laws. Okay, so we were talking about the thematic areas, and I think it's really important to have this discussion, although it's slightly technical. So we were speaking about social equality and empowerment. The fourth thematic area is environment and disaster management.
Yes, that is because lots of women, they are the ones who are mostly suffering during a disaster.
Okay.
I mean, when there are landslides or floods or whatever, you would like take these people out of their homes and put them in a shelter. So the menstrual hygiene issues are their hygiene issues. I mean, mostly their hygiene issues.
Okay.
And for them to change their clothes and all that, I mean, it's just a temporary shelter where there is no security. So those issues, right now disaster management is focusing on that. They have given a lot of focus to that. So that's what we are talking about here, that women should be able to make decisions on how they are going to manage this when there is a case of disaster.
Okay.
The other one is equality in decision making. That's the area where we are quite lagging behind, because even in the parliament it's about 6% or 12%, I think, the representation, and we don't have many women in very high. We have, but I don't think that's kind of a substantive number. Like, I mean, it's not a real good number.
And there are barriers to women coming on top.
Yes. So that's why we thought bringing it up through the policy, that they should be given leadership. They should be given leadership to decide what is best for them. And it's like decision making in political, economic and public life.
Right.
We managed to get the
local government.
Yeah, local government. We were in the process of getting the provincial councils also. So it will hopefully, because we had included it in most of the action plans that have been drafted now.
Right.
So,
and this quota system, it is working, right?
It is
as an
working.
initial step. Yeah,
yes.
It is effective.
Yeah, because the representation increased to 22% with that quota system.
Right. Of course, there are going to be issues.
Yeah.
But it is a necessary step to ensure that women somehow put themselves in front. Okay. Let's also very briefly go through the other three thematic areas before we go in for a break.
Yeah, it's access to justice, peace and security. Like the women's ability to get involved in dispute resolution, peace and security, and ensuring protection of women and girls, gender minorities, marginalized and vulnerable people. Access to justice, like we are doing referral programs in the districts. Referral in the sense if she is having any kind of issue, where she should go to and how she should reach the other services that are available. So those systems are being developed.
Okay.
And that is through the Access to Justice initiative that we are doing it.
Okay, fantastic.
And then freedom from gender-based violence, that is the most important thing. Lots of issues on gender-based violence. And lastly, the children with a lot of emphasis on girl-child.
Right. Okay. We go in for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
At least 40% of women coming into parliament. there has to be that equal number come as professionals.
I think election expenditure campaign finance is necessary because there are huge sums of money that are spent.
Keep the pressure on the government and on the parliament and the decision makers that enough is enough.
Very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. We're broadcasting, as we almost always do, from the Newsfirst studios in Dorset Street.
Newsline, Monday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV1.
Across all walks of life, listening to the people, visiting door to door, witnessing the truth firsthand. This is the heart of the village. Gammata, for the people, by the people.
ලංකාවේ දේශපාලනය කියලාම අපි කතා කරන්නේ පක්ෂ දේශපාලනය සහ මනාප තරගයත් එක්ක අවස්ථාවන් ලබා ගැනීම ගැන.
මේ රට කරවන සම්බන්ධ වෙන ඒගොල්ලන් තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ මගේ රට අපේ රට අවුරුදු මෙන්න මේ කාලෙකින් පසුවේ මෙන්න මේ විදියට මෙතන තියෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා හීනයි. ඒ හීනය සාක්ෂාත් කරගන්න තමයි අපි උත්සාහ ගන්න ඕනේ.
අපි කුඩා පිරිසක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි කුඩා පිරිස මේ ලෝකය වෙනස් කිරීමේහිලා දක්වන දායකත්වය ඉතාම ඉහළයි කියලා තමයි අපි හිතන්නේ.
මේ වෙලාවේදී දැන් අපේ රට බංකොලොත් රටක් විදිහට රටේ ආර්ථිකය ශක්තිමත් කරන්නට ඕනේ ඉතාමත්ම කඩිනමින් අපේ රටේ අස්ථාවර දේශපාලනය ඉතාමත්ම ඉක්මනින් නගා සිටුවීමේ කාලය ඇවිල්ලා කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා.
ජාතික මෙහෙවර සතිය දිනවල උදෑසන 10:00ට TV1 ඔස්සේ. උගත මනා ශිල්පයමයි මතු රැකෙනා ගම්මැද්දෙන් දිවයින පුරා පාසල් හා පෙර පාසල් ව්‍යාපෘති රැසක් සිසු අයිතියට පත් කළ වගායි. රඹෑව පරගස්වැව ශ්‍රී ප්‍රදීපාලෝක පෙර පාසල, අනුරාධපුර ඉසින් බැස්සගම පෙර පාසල, අත්තන් කඩවල යාය 26 මහසෙන් ප්‍රාථමික පාසල, වැලිමඩ මාලිගාතැන්න විද්‍යාලය, මාතලේ කුමුක්කන්දර විල්ගමුව පාසල් පුස්තකාලය, මොන රාගල හම්බෙගමුව විද්‍යාලයේ ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය, අනුරාධපුර රලපනාව ප්‍රාථමික විද්‍යාලයේ පන්තිකාමර සංවර්ධනය, පුත්තලම කල්පිටිය සින්දාත්‍රි මාත්‍රා විද්‍යාලය සංවර්ධනය. ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර.
Welcome back. We are in discussion with Kumudu Pereira, Legal Officer, Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment. We were just discussing the national policy on gender equality and women's empowerment, which was launched last week. Kumudu, a policy is only as good as its implementation. So this sounds fantastic. But take us through the process of how these thematic areas will now be implemented. Is it by way of an action plan? Are the laws being devised simultaneously? Just take us through that process.
Yes. The policy was actually the foundation kind of thing. So based on that policy, we are in the process of drafting an action plan. But we have already drafted 3 laws on this. So that's why I said the policy was the foundation. Based on the policy, we drafted 3 bills. The Gender Equality Bill. In the Gender Equality Bill, we are introducing a Gender Equality Commissioner who would take these issues, who would entertain issues that are forwarded to him, and he would make recommendations. So it's still the bill is still a draft. We are getting input from we shared it with not the public actually. We shared it with government stakeholders, NGOs, civil societies, political parties. So we are taking in their input, their observations on it, and we are in the process of finalizing the draft. The other bill we have is the Women Empowerment Bill.
Okay.
That is also in the same process. The third most important bill is the National Independent, it's an independent commission, National Commission on Women's Bill. That of course was drafted some time back, but based on the policy we are like fine-tuning it. In the National Commission on Women bill, we have included a female ombudsman who would look into these issues of women. So the commission has powers to inquire into, investigate into, research into, and make recommendations into issues of women. So it's any kind of discrimination, infringement of right of women, any kind of thing, the commission has the power to investigate. It's more like the Human Rights Commission. There is it has lots of powers. So we are in the process of drafting all this. The drafts are done. We are in the process of finalizing it. So once the drafting is finalized, we would share it with the legal draftsman, and then for AG's concurrence, and then we would get the cabinet approval and then submit it to the parliament. So we are hoping to get it done by this year, end of this year at least. So we have the framework ready. The action plan on the policy is in the process of being drafted. So activities will be conducted under that.
Right. Article 12 of Sri Lanka's constitution guarantees the right to equality before the law and equal protection of the law for all persons. Article 12.2 of the constitution sets out the principle of non-discrimination on the ground of sex. Something that we see in society, Kumudu, is how despite a country's constitution setting out that it believes in non-discrimination, there it is sort of so entrenched and embedded in society, just like corruption in Sri Lankan society. It's all over. You can't really quantify it, you can't really catch hold of it because it's so intricately interwoven into the societal fabric. Over and above legislation, what are the other measures that can be taken to ensure non-discrimination based on gender?
I think we have to start from the young age. From the young age, you have to tell the children their responsibilities. Like, I get my son to do housework. He should understand, as a human being, you have to know this, you have to have these skills.
Yeah, it's not a gendered role.
No, it's not a gendered role.
Yeah, it's a life skill.
It's a life skill. He has to know how to survive. To maintain a house, he's too small, but still as a boy, in case he has to live alone, he can't be getting maids all the time. He has to know how to survive. He has to know how to make his meal, how to take care of, himself, basically himself, how to take care of himself. You can't expect your mother or your wife or your partner or your son, child or whatever, whoever to come and do it for you. It's you. So that has to be given from the younger age. And this, and they had to be made compassionate, And one concept, this is my personal view, I kind of strongly oppose this, what do you call this, convents and schools for boys, schools for girls. That concept I don't agree. You should have mixed schools. They should be together, they should mingle with each other, and then only, if you're with a girl, they tend to respect a girl, They know what she's going through. When she's attaining puberty, how she changes, how she's going through those menstrual periods and all that. They would see and they would understand. You should have those concepts. When this sexual and reproductive health, children should be given education on that. Children should be made aware. That's where you should start. At least the next generation would be kind of free from these kind of gender issues.
So the book that spoke about sexuality education, the Hate Pota, it was taken out of the syllabus, right?
It was taken out.
Yes. So don't you think that the Ministry of Women and Children's Child Affairs and Social Empowerment can then act in liaison with the Ministry of Education to ensure that it's deeply unscientific to, remove sexuality education from the syllabus. Isn't that a conversation that your ministry should be having with the Ministry of Education?
Yeah, based on the conversation, that book was drafted. The book was developed based on the conversation.
So then what is happening?
I think the period of launching the book was the issue at that time, I think. So we are hoping to bring it back.
Okay.
I think the book was launched during the presidential elections and it had the minister's speech or whatever on it. So they thought it was a politically motivated thing. I think that's why it was taken off. So hopefully they would take it back. Because I personally went through the book because my daughter is of the same age. So I also read the book because when I heard this, all the disagreements coming on it, you have to first read it yourself and see what's wrong with it. I didn't actually find anything wrong with it. I thought you should give them education. You should let them know what's happening to their bodies, how the other person's body is changing, how he's going to react, he or she is going to react, how it's going to affect that person, and how you should deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Because we need to equip our children with the knowledge and the awareness, knowledge on consent, mutual respect, dignity, all of these things. And since that's not happening, children are moving away from scientific information to pornography, to other vices, which is quite dangerous. And I feel like the Ministry of Women and Child Affairs has a pivotal role to play in this respect, where there is so much of misinformation and children's minds are just completely misled by all of these other social vices because they just lack the information.
Yes, that is what we are also right now working on, because there's a lot of misinformation in the social media, in the internet. I mean, we have to face the reality. Children these days are quite intelligent. So they know where they can get information, they know how to access internet, they know everything. So I think it's kind of really kind of old age thinking to think that these things should not be discussed in public. These things should not be given to school children. I mean, reproductive health. Education on reproductive health should not be given to school children. It's like Hanamiti adahas kiyanne, I mean, it's far gone now. The children know it. They know what LGBT is even. So they are quite far ahead right now. So might as well give them education. It's not like you're talking about sex education. It's like you're telling them how to protect themselves from it, you know, to engage in safe sex without getting into trouble, I mean, without getting unwanted pregnancies and getting into all sorts of trouble.
A few months ago, I had a conversation on the same show with Hans Billy Moria, who said that as a starting point, we should perhaps have child protection education in schools so that we teach children about good touch, bad touch, how they could best protect themselves. So even if, and we need to train our teachers. So it's a whole cycle which we're ignoring and not really doing anything about, as a result of which we see skyrocketing cases of child abuse, child sexual abuse, rapes, grievous assaults and murders and suicides. And it just goes on and on and on, this cycle of violence. And I feel like the government, the state, is not doing enough at all.
Yeah, the National Child Protection Authority, they did awareness programs last few years on good touch and bad touch to school children. But there are issues with certain schools, like principals would not let, because they would come and say this would affect them badly. I mean, children would get a bad picture, you would give them some wrong information, that kind of issues are there. As I agree with that, yes, it should be a very holistic approach. We all should get together, and it's high time we do something about it. because lots of cases in the recent past, lots of cases were reported. And most of the time, children are victims to crimes of people known to them.
Of course.
That's the worst part.
Last 5 minutes of the conversation, how do you see the actual practical implementation of this concept of gender equality bearing fruition? Because in society, I mean, we can have policies, we can have laws, but ultimately, if the society is not respectful of or respectful towards women, if there is no culture of mutual respect, then, I mean, none of this is going to really do much. So what's the way forward in terms of gender equality?
I think the media has to play a huge role in this, because people, I mean, most of us, we all watch TV. So through the TV, in the earlier days, most of the teledramas would just show these domestic violence cases, how women are being harassed, how different names are called upon on women. We need, firstly, we need to educate the kids through the education system and through the media. Give a bright picture of how women, how strong a woman can be, how a woman can actually develop her household, how she can bring up her kids, how you have to give them equal opportunity to show how capable they are. That should be done. Yeah, it's the laws are not the only solution. There has to be a what do you call that, a dialogue on this. We should start talking on this. We should get people to come up with their ideas. Then we know what are the, like, it's only a few people, a few clusters of people who talk about gender, the gendered rights, the women's rights and all that. If you talk about women's rights, they would brand you as a feminist or something like that. I mean, I talk about women's rights, but I don't call myself a feminist. That's a different concept. But we are fighting for women's rights because we believe that women should be given the opportunities that are available in the country. They should have the equal opportunity to develop themselves. So you should start a dialogue on that with everybody in the society from all stratas.
All right, thank you very much for your perspectives. Kumudu Pereira, Legal Officer, Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment. Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again on Monday with the Sinhala edition of the People's Platform. Have a safe weekend. Good night.